It is not to be wondered at that the sea should have been more prolific in monstrosities and in animal forms, whose real nature has been misunderstood. We specifically refer to the famous sea serpent, held by many to be the most utterly fabulous of all fabled creatures, while a few, including some naturalists of distinction, stoutly maintain that the creature has a real existence, though whether it be rightly called a sea serpent or not is a point about which even believers are extremely doubtful. Unquestionably, the account of the sea serpent which has commanded most attention was that given by the captain, officers and crew of the British frigate Dædalus, Captain McQueen, in 1848. The Times of London published on October 9, 1848, a paragraph stating that the sea serpent had been seen by the captain and most of the officers and crew of this ship on her passage home from the East Indies. The Admiralty inquired at once into the truth of the statement, and the following is abridged from Captain McQueen's official reply, addressed to Admiral Sir William Gage. Sir, in reply to your letter requiring information as to the truth of a statement published in the Times newspaper of a sea serpent of extraordinary dimensions having been seen from the Dædalus, I have the honour to inform you that at 5 p.m., August 6th last, in latitude 24 degrees 44 minutes south, longitude 9 degrees 22 minutes east, the weather dark and cloudy, the ship on the port tack. Something very unusual rapidly approaching the ship from before the beam. The object was seen to be an enormous serpent, with head and shoulders kept about 4 feet constantly above the surface of the sea, as nearly as we could judge. At least 60 feet of the animal was on the surface, no part of which length was used, so far as we could see, in propelling the animal either by vertical or horizontal undulation. It passed quietly, but so closely under our lee quarter that, had it been a man of my acquaintance, I should easily have recognized his features with the naked eye. It did not, while visible, deviate from its course to the southwest, which it held on at the pace of from 12 to 15 knots, as if on some determined purpose. The diameter of the serpent was from 15 to 16 inches behind the head, which was, without any doubt, that of a snake. Its color was a dark brown with yellowish white about the throat. It did not once, while within the range of view from our glasses, sink below the surface. It had no fins, but something like the mane of a horse, or rather a bunch of seaweed, washed about its back. It was seen by the quartermaster, the boatswain's mate, and the man at the wheel, in addition to myself and the officers above mentioned. Signed Peter McQueen, Captain. The correspondence and controversy elicited by the statement of Captain McQueen were exceedingly interesting. It is noteworthy at the outset that few, perhaps none, who had read the original statement suggested the idea of illusion, while it need hardly perhaps be said that no one expressed the slightest doubt as to the bona fides of Captain McQueen and his fellow witnesses. Among the earliest communications was one from J. Sterling, a gentleman who had himself seen a fish or reptile at a distance of 1/4 of a mile, which, examined through a telescope, corresponded in appearance with the sea serpent as described. This communication was chiefly interesting, however, as advancing the theory that the supposed sea serpent is not a serpent at all, but a long-necked plesiosaurian. Creatures of this kind prevailed in that era when what is called the lias was formed, a fossiliferous stratum belonging to the secondary or Mesozoic rocks. They are not found in the later or tertiary rocks, and thereon an argument might be deduced against their possible existence in the present or post-tertiary period. But this argument is far from being conclusive. The reptiles were extraordinary, says Lyell, for their number, size and structure. At this stage a very eminent naturalist entered the field, Professor Owen. He dwelt first on a certain characteristic of Captain McQueen's letter, which no student of science could fail to notice. The definite statement that the creature was so-and-so, where a scientific observer would simply have said that the creature presented such and such characteristics. No sooner was the captain's attention called to the object than it was discovered to be an enormous serpent, though in reality the true nature of the creature could not be determined even from the observations made during the whole time that it remained visible. Take the more certain characters: the head with a convex, moderately capacious cranium, short, obtuse muzzle not extending further than to beneath the eye, color and surface as stated. All these are the characters of the head of a warm-blooded mammal, none of them those of a cold-blooded reptile or fish, he said. Body long, dark brown, not undulating, without dorsal or other apparent fins, but something like the mane of a horse, or rather a bunch of seaweed washed about its back. From the captain's report, he inferred that the creature had hair, showing only where longest on the back, and therefore that the animal was not a mammal of the whale species, but rather a great seal. This elephant seal, which attains the length of from 20 to 30 feet, was the most probable member of the seal family to be found about 300 miles from the western shore of the southern end of Africa at that latitude. Such a creature, accidentally carried from its natural domain by a floating iceberg, would have to urge its way steadily southwards, as the supposed sea serpent was doing, and probably the creature approached the Dædalus to scan her capabilities as a resting place, as it paddled its long, stiff body past the ship. The excitement produced by the strange spectacle and the recollection of old sailors' yarns would suffice to account for the metamorphosis of a seal into a manned sea serpent. Professor Owen's argument seems sufficiently to dispose of the belief that the creature really was a sea serpent or any cold-blooded reptile, but let us pause to consider the corrections immediately made by Captain McQuee. Few can readily accept the belief that Captain McQuee and his officers had mistaken an elephant seal for a creature such as they describe and picture. To begin with, although it might be probable enough that no one on board the Dædalus had ever seen a gigantic seal freely swimming in the open ocean, yet we can hardly suppose they would not have known a seal under such circumstances. Captain McQuee immediately replied, "I assert that neither was it a common seal nor an elephant seal, its great length and its totally different physiognomy precluding the possibility of its being a phoca of any species. The head was flat, and not a capacious vaulted cranium, nor had it a stiff, inflexible trunk, a conclusion to which Professor Owen has jumped, most certainly not justified by my simple statement that no portion of the 60 feet seen by us was used in propelling it through the water either by vertical or horizontal undulation. The calculation of the creature's length was made before, not after, the idea had been entertained that the animal was a serpent, and that myself and my officers are too well accustomed to judge of lengths and breadths of objects in the sea to mistake a real substance, and an actual living body, coolly and dispassionately contemplated, at so short a distance too, for the eddy caused by the action of the deeply immersed fins and tail of a rapidly moving gigantic seal raising its head above the water, as Professor Owen imagines, in quest of its lost iceberg. I deny the existence of excitement or the possibility of optical illusion. I adhere to the statement as to form, color, and dimensions contained in my report to the Admiralty.